Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My name is Molly McLaughlin, and I own a company that optimizes sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Each week, I'll be interviewing world-class experts ranging from doctors, innovators, and thought leaders to give actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to become a more skillful sleeper. Let's jump into your dose of practical sleep training. Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My guest today wants to get warning labels on light bulbs. What does that have to do with sleep? Well, I promise we will connect all those dots and more. But first off, the name of our guest is Dr. Martin Moore-Ede. He is a MD PhD, a leading world expert on circadian clocks and light. As a professor at Harvard Medical School, he located the human circadian clock. He founded CIRCADIAN Light Research Center, which identified the key blue wavelengths that synchronize their circadian clock during the day and disrupted at night. And based on this breakthrough, patented and developed the first evidence-based healthy circadian lights, which improve sleep and circadian health. A quick aside, before recording this podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the platforms, if you're not following us on those, please follow us. I'm at Molly Eastman, Sleep is a Skill. And I had posted a bit about some of the findings that Dr. Martin Moore-Ede had discovered. And those posts got a lot of attention because we led with a little bit about his research in which he found that our light bulbs are wrecking our sleep and our health. Out of his research, 248 leading circadian scientists with a total of 2,697 peer-reviewed publications on light and circadian clocks since 2008 now support the use of lights that promote circadian health, including the addition of warning labels on these light bulbs at night. So human circadian clocks are highly sensitive to blue light wavelengths, and exposure to insufficient blue-rich light during the day and excessive blue-rich light at night can lead to health problems, including, of course, as it relates to this podcast, difficulties with your sleep. So we are going to get into all that and more. I think you're going to be really, really interested and hopefully fascinated in this world of light and its impact on our biology. As always, if you have any questions, head on over to sleepisaskill.com. In the lower right-hand corner, we have a little sleep bot where you can ask any and all questions, send them our way. We really want to make this a dialogue. And also, we are going to start doing a Q&A series. So please put those questions of what you might be dealing with around your sleep, and we'll make sure to get some of those questions answered here on the podcast. Now, without further ado, let's jump in. So I get a lot of questions around sleep supplements, and I'm very hesitant to just throw out a whole laundry list of possibilities. One, I don't think it's the most responsible thing to do. I really do believe in testing to see what types of supplements make sense for you. And two, because I really truly believe that most of the things that you can do to improve your sleep are behavioral, psychological, environmental in nature, and often don't cost a dime. However, there is one supplement that I personally take every day and that I do feel quite comfortable with suggesting for most individuals to experiment with because of a couple of reasons. Its high safety profile and high rates of deficiencies in our modern society. Some put the numbers as somewhere around 80% of the population being deficient in this one area, and that is magnesium. So magnesium has been called the calming mineral, and some report that magnesium can increase GABA, which encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is critical for sleep. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating our body's stress response system. Those with magnesium deficiency usually have higher anxiety and stress levels, which negatively impact sleep as well. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most magnesium products out there are either synthetic or they only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when in reality, your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. So that's why I recommend a product from my friends over at BioOptimizers. They have created something called the Magnesium Breakthrough. And taking this magnesium before bed helps you relax and wake up refreshed and energized. And while we don't recommend that you go too nuts on looking at all the sleep stage classifications on all your wearables, I will share anecdotally that many clients have reported improvements in their deep sleep trend numbers. Again, I don't want you going nuts on the sleep stage classification numbers on your wearables, but I do want to let you know about that because I know that many of you do reach out on questions of how to improve your deep sleep. So I also love that BioOptimizers offers free shipping on select orders, and they offer a 365-day money-back guarantee on all their products. Plus, they have a customer satisfaction rating of 99.3%. Very impressive. And you can get 10% off Magnesium Breakthrough. Again, this is the same magnesium that I use every single night. And finally, you can get 10% off Magnesium Breakthrough. Again, that's the magnesium supplement that I use every single night by going to magbreakthrough.com/sleep is a skill. And be sure to use the code sleep is a skill for 10% off. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. This episode is really going to be a deep dive into understanding the massive importance of light and dark on our sleep-wake cycle. And I'm really honored to have our guest on the show today. Martin, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Glad to join you.
Thank you. So I shared with you before we hit record of some of the podcast episodes that we've done so far with different experts in the realm of light. And certainly you have a rich history in this area. So wondering if you can just share a little bit about your background and how you became interested in this research that impacts our sleep results.
Absolutely. Well, my interest in circadian rhythms started out when I was back in medical school in England, and then did a surgical internship. And I was working these 36-hour-long shifts as a surgeon in training, walking around like a zombie, off for 12, back in for 36 hours again. And I really got intrigued in how could one manage, why did one get sleepy at some times and not sleepy at others? And that got me interested in circadian rhythms. So I took a detour out of surgery to do a PhD at Harvard Medical School, and ultimately found a research lab at Harvard Medical School devoted to understanding what was causing these circadian rhythms. And this is before anybody knew about biological clocks per se. My team at Harvard identified for the first time the clock in the human brain. It's the clock that controls the timing of sleep and wake. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, sort of a pinhead size, a little nucleus in the old part of the brain, connected to the eyes. And all our research at that time, we knew it was synchronized by light. We knew day and night would keep it in sync with the Earth's rotation. We knew that our rhythms normally would be, in good shape when we're seeing daylight during the day and we're sleeping in the dark at night. And we knew, obviously, that when you fly across time zones, you have that jet lag, that disruption that occurs. These days, we sort of call it circadian disruption, that occurs when you fly across time zones. We just assumed all light was the same because light is light, right? And the big finding that really turned this whole thing upside down, there were several things happened around the year 2000. First of all, there were several major studies coming out showing that nurses working the night shift had 50 to 60% more breast cancer when light at night. We saw the right amount of diabetes was coming out, and we saw also through ill health associated with people working the night shift or, at home with the lights on overnight, sleeping maybe with the lights on. Although all those conditions have been really identified as a big effect of light at night. In other words, when it's dark outside is quite harmful. And the question was, what do we do about it? That's pretty impossible because we all want to be able to do our thing. We want to be able to, read a book, or if people do work the night shifts, nurses have to work the night shifts, doctors have to work the night shifts, a lot of people do. What do we do about that if we're causing 50, 60% more breast cancer, more prostate cancer, more diabetes? And at that time, I was consulting some of the big Fortune 500 companies. And I said, Martin, you know all about the circadian clock. You know all about, what could we do? Well, fortunately, there was a key discovery around the same time. And that was, it wasn't white light. It wasn't the full spectrum of white that was causing the problem. It was actually a rather small band of light in the blue that was causing the issue. So that immediately said to us, okay, there is a solution here. This is interesting because if we could just extract the blue out of light at night and give the blue during the day, we would solve this problem. And that's in a nutshell what we've done. And we set out, and I never thought about building lights in my life before. Hey, I was a doctor, a researcher at Harvard, and so forth. But there was a need for lights. And so I learned a lot about, the current lights coming in the market. Around this time, the LEDs were coming out. Now, you remember the old days when we had fluorescent lights and we had the regular incandescent light bulbs, and maybe we had a bit of halogen lights and a few other things out there. All today are banned, by the way, or becoming banned in favor of LED lights. And the reason is that LED lights are highly energy efficient. Thomas Edison's light bulb, most of the electricity turned into heat, 90% turned into heat, only 10% turned into light. So in these days, we're all worried about the climate and global warming and everything else. Along comes this technology, which is LED lights. And those are wonderful in the sense that you can have 20 times greater efficiency, 20 times more light for the same watt of electricity. That's a no-brainer, right? Except there's a little problem. And the little problem is they use blue as part of the key mechanism. They pump the thing that's so efficient at turning electricity into light is a little chip, a chip that is a blue chip. And so those LED lights have a spike of blue in them. And that spike of blue is just fine during the daytime. But at night, it's harmful as heck. In other words, it is causing cancer, it is causing diabetes, it's causing obesity when people have the lights on at night and they have a regular LED light. So we've transitioned, back in 2013, only 1% of the lights were LED. That was a new technology just coming on. Today, it's 80% of our lights are LED. Most people have LED lights in the home. I don't, for very good reason, all right? These LED lights, because as I say, during the day, they're fine. If you're in a 9 to 5 office, perfect, no problem, right? But if you go into the evening, we're incredibly sensitive to very small amounts of blue because that's the signal that our eyes are detecting. And you might say, why are our eyes detecting it? Well, it turns out there are special cells in the eye, receptors, that detect, they're blue detectors. And those blue detectors are sensing the amount of blue in light. That's a signal. Our eyes tell our bodies whether it's day or night, not just on the broad spectrum of light, but whether there's blue there or not. So in a sense, if you can build light that is rich in blue, our eyes and our brains are detecting that as daytime. And if you build lights that have no blue in them, then those lights are not telling us it's daytime, it's saying it's equivalent to dark. And so now with that, we can reverse all these medical problems. So so we went out and built LEDs, and there are light bulbs in the market, there are fixtures in the market coming out now, and we've done a lot of work with them. So you can actually now address this problem. So these are different types of lights. So the classic lights are these LEDs, rich in blue, causing the problems. But now we need to really have lights that change from rich in blue during the day to zero blue or have very little blue during the night. That's a long answer to your question. So.
No, I love that. That's so much goodness there. And I just had a quick question because we've had certain experts on the podcast also speaking to concerns about the band of green light, the green spectrum potentially impacting melatonin production or having still somewhat of an excitatory effect. Have you found that, or is it more just really located solely in the blue piece?
Well, this was one of the aha moments because as we looked at this original studies, I said back in 2000 on the classic studies identifying this blue, really they identified blue, green, and violet light as being pretty, the eye being sensitive to, and the circadian clock being sensitive to. And so we sort of assumed it was a pretty broad range of light. The problem with that, a pretty broad range of colors. And just before we go any further, think about the light spectrum, right? What is this light spectrum we're talking about? Well, it's all the colors of the rainbow. A rainbow is, the light spectrum. So it starts in violet, goes to blue, moves towards green, moves from green over to yellow and orange and red. All those colors are embedded in every light, all right? Or in natural sunlight, for example. Natural sunlight's got all these wonderful colors in it. Fused together, we only see our eyes detected as white. So now what we realized is, oh my gosh, if we have to solve this problem, all the violet, all the blue, all the green, we end up with a ghastly yellow-orange light. I mean, it really is pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
And so we said, that's not really a great solution. And you may have seen on the internet, there are these very orangey yellow bulbs and things you can find.
Yes.
And what they're doing is they take out all the violet, all the blue, all the green. But the aha moment was, oh my gosh, all these studies were done in people who were in the dark. They were all blindfolded for 2 hours in a perfectly dark room. They had drops put in their eyes, like you do when you're having a visual exam at the optometrist, eyes dilated. And then they got treated with different color lights for a very short period of time, maybe 60 minutes or 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, relatively short amounts of time. In the real world, we see white polychromatic light. We are light adapted. So those people we call dark adapted. In other words, it's like night vision, right? In other words, if you want to go around, and astronomers, if they want to see the stars, will sit in perfect darkness for a couple of hours. So their eyes become totally adjusted to the darkness. And it's only the rods in our eyes that are seeing light. And then we're very good at walking around in moonlight and all the rest of it, and starlight even. We're pretty good there because we're designed for it. But when you go into daylight, we light adapt. So what's happening in the regular world when we're going around, we're fully light adapted. We're adapted to normal full light. So we said, well, what's this really like in somebody who's light adapted? Like we all are virtually all the time. And we found a different story. We found the violet had no effect. We found the green had no effect. The only thing was blue, and really centered on this. There's a chemical in this called melanopsin, which is a photopigment that sits in these cells in the eye. IPRGCs is the acronym for them. They're little, and intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells is the technical term, but they're the blue detectors, and they're ultimately blue detectors. And so it really comes down now. The story is you've got to control the blue, and the green is not an issue. And now there's still some debating back and forth in science and the scientific details, but it's pretty clear that in that dark adapted abnormal state, which people did because there's a way of doing very precise lab experiments. Everything's controlled if you start from a darkness. But if you go into the real world, people going around and doing their regular thing, normally in normal white light, normally they're moving, they're active, and they're in light for how long are you up before you go to sleep? 16 hours, right? So yeah, in that state, it is blue. And blue is the thing you need to contain. And it's a particular type of blue that's close to this, what's 480 nanometers. So again, going back to that spectrum, visible light, lots of things we can't see. We can't see UV, we can't see infrared, we can't see radio waves, we can't see those things. We see a little narrow band of what comes out of the sun. So we see this violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. And that goes from 380 to 780 nanometers is a metric, a measurement of it. We've got a little patch around 880 which is right in the center of the blue. That's the magic formula, and it's around that we need to control. So we need to take all 480 blue and some, of course, a wider band around it out during the night, and we need to deliver it during the day. And then we actually do get to solve this problem of the harmful effect of light at night.
Wow. Okay. So out of that, then in your research, what you're finding is contrary to, some of the people listening might identify as like these, sleep biohackers or all these things, right? And so they might have red light bulbs, they might have Himalayan salt lamps, candles, all of those things. Yeah. That's all well and good. But what you're saying, and this is exciting from a more just even aesthetics perspective, that we can get the same results from what you're finding from a more traditional looking environment. So, because my understanding is even the light behind you is conducive to what we're talking about, that won't impact our sleep in the same way, but still be able to not look like a total weirdo, which is what some of the red lights can do, right? Is that
and the short answer is the red light does its trick because it's got no blue in it, right?
Because it's got no blue in it.
That's perfectly fine. Candles, interestingly, have virtually no blue in it.
Yeah.
Fire. Think about, we've been wandering around this planet for a million plus years, the human species, right? And what do we have for right up to 100 years ago? It was all candlelight and it was all campfires, right? Wood fires. Sure. Neither a wood fire nor a candle has any blue in it, or virtually no blue. So
Yeah.
we never had this problem until Thomas Edison came along. Now,
Yes.
Thomas Edison didn't do such a bad job because the light bulbs he created actually have relatively low blue, about 4% blue.
Sure.
Right? But now these LEDs we've been talking about have 15%, 20%, 25% blue. They are blasting us with this blue, which is, as I say, fine during the day, but extremely harmful at night. So we've actually got to now go around and start replacing all these things. And it's like changing the course of a battleship. In other words, the whole story about the ship moving along and trying to turn it around, an aircraft carrier or whatever it is. It takes some time because all the energy, all the policy about the Department of Energy, about energy saving, all the messaging has been go LED, save electricity, save our planet, right? But we're hurting out. So the irony is, yes, we're saving the health of the planet, but we're hurting our own health if we do it with the classic conventional LED. But we don't have to give up the energy efficiency because we can now build special LEDs, rich in blue or missing blue, depending on day or night. We can build them to almost the same energy efficiency. So we can actually solve the energy efficiency problem. But right now, it's like generation one technology, and we're saying, whoops.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And to underscore too, just that there's this whole world behind that in agreement with what you're speaking to, just to underscore, and it was 248, right? The leading circadian scientists that reached this consensus that it's really time that we change the lights that we're using and to even put warning labels on the current light bulbs. Is that all accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we did this because I'm out there talking about this and everything else. And people saying, well, it's just your viewpoint of the world. I said, no, the scientists know this. And so how do we do it? We went out did a survey of all the scientists that had published lots of papers in this field. Anybody who published more than 4 academic research papers in this field, we contacted. 248 of them responded and got a clear consensus. I mean, there's clear agreement. Circadian rhythms are critical to health. Light at night increases the risk of breast cancer, diabetes, obesity, fully proven. It's the blue that's the problem. It's around the peak blue effect is a range between around 480, but the sensitivity of the receptors is about 480. Everyone agrees with that. You need to control the range of 460 to 495. In other words, the range of blues around this blue you need to fix. And it's time now to really tell the world you've got to change your lights. And you've got to actually recognize that we need to put warning labels. That was actually one of the agreements. We need to put warning labels on the standard LED lights that they may be harmful if used at night. And that was, to get a consensus out of 248 scientists or leading scientists love to argue and squabble about all the scientific detail. When you get a consensus, you're getting to the point where the science is so well established. Let's move on to other interesting things, right? New science, but the core science is there and it's ready for application. And as I say, that's the exciting thing. We're at that pivotal point. But the problem is scientists all agree and talk to each other, but does the world know what the scientists are saying? Somebody said, scientists know all about it. They talk to each other, but they never talk to their neighbor about it.
Yes.
So, over the backyard fence, right? That's what we're doing here, Molly, with your show, which I'm delighted to be able to do.
I'm so grateful. It's so clear the difference that this can make in our sleep, in our health, in our life. So you taking the time to share about this is huge, huge, huge. Now, I know that you have a very cool gadget that can even further demonstrate the light that you have that can serve as a type of light that we might all be able to utilize in the evenings and kind of what's different about that. So maybe that can help demonstrate what we're talking about.
So this gadget, it's called a spectrophotometer. And what it does is it enables you to quickly take a snapshot of any light. It's just about the size of my iPhone, right? So it's a little smaller than my iPhone, actually, handheld. And what I can do is literally look at any light and take a snapshot of it. So on that screen, I can see it. There's nothing. Can you see that? All right. There's nothing on it now. Now I've got an LED light just for display. And as I say, I don't use LED lights on my house for this purpose, but I'm going to take a snapshot of one. And here now, I've just taken a quick snapshot of that. And I think you can see it's a huge spike of blue.
Yes.
That's what's now, during the day, that's great. During the night, that is devastatingly harmful, right? And that's the problem.
Absolutely.
So it's possible now, we have built light bulbs that take that away. So I've got one back here, right? And this is you can see a desk lamp here, and I just point directly at the bulb. And if I point at this bulb here, now I can come by, and I think you can see the blue is gone. In other words, there's a hole there in the spectrum. Sure. So now you can see violet on one end, right? Virtually no blue, and then you see the greens and all the other colors as well, yellows and reds. And that just tells you that that's called a zero blue bulb as an example. But it's a way that we can quickly assess, what is the lighting? Is this good lighting, bad lighting? Is it appropriate for the time of day? So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Amazing. And have you found in your research, does this still need to be looked at to have any conclusive results, but have you found that some people are innately more sensitive to this blue light than other people, or just across the board? We know as human beings, we're sensitive and diurnal creatures, and so we need to be aware of this, but are there some people that are even more at risk that you found, or is it hard to say?
No, absolutely there are. And some beautiful studies done by Sean Kane in Australia, Monash University, and his colleagues, where they put little monitors on people, the equivalent of one of these devices, but a small, and you can just put on their collar and continuously measure people. And they looked at what happens over the course of, as you go into the evening hours. And they showed that some people are much more sensitive than others. Sure. So one of the interesting findings in this area is that some people are late night owls and some people are morning types, right? I happen to be an early morning type. I get up at 5 in the morning. My wife is not that way, but we'll leave that another story. But
straight into bed, fellows.
Yeah. And other people, just find it very hard to wake up and but I, really are energetic and want to move into 1 o'clock in the morning or wherever, before they get to bed. That is a fundamental difference in people, but that is actually exaggerated by this response to light. So it turns out those people who are owl types are very, very sensitive to light. That light now is shifting their clocks, really delaying their clocks, putting them in a different time zone, as it were. In other words, it's equivalent of living in Boston and having your clock shifted to California as a result of light. People like me, morning types, much less sensitive to that. We don't respond quite so much. And so as a result, our clocks don't shift quite so much. And so that's part of the issue. So there are genetic differences between people and their sensitivity, but the amount of light it takes is really at very sensitive levels. To give you an idea, the best test is reading speed, right? In other words, if you're looking at a paper and you've got something like New York Times or whatever you choose to read, and you look at it at a newspaper, if the light levels are too low, it's very hard to read. Well, to get to safe light levels with a regular LED, you've got to put it so you can't read the newspaper. You have to make it so dim to get reduce the blue, because there are two ways of changing blue, right? Change the spectrum here, right? Or just turn down the lights, because every part of the spectrum is less when there's less light. But you have to turn it so dim you can't even read in order to solve this problem. Well, that's not very practical. Everyone wants to be able to see and do their thing and enjoy reading the book or whatever else you want to do in the evening. Same thing for computer screens, by the way. The computer screens are producing a lot of blue light. And now there are computer screens coming on which have the same spectrum I showed you, blue free at night and, full of blue during the daytime. And those types of things make a real difference in terms of how much people sleep, what is the delay before they can fall asleep, how well they feel after they've slept, as well as things like the internal hormone melatonin, which is one of the markers that we use. But it's many, many hormones in the body are affected, not just melatonin, but melatonin happens to be a very convenient one we use as a marker for what's going on.
Okay. So for the lights that we're now at, I think you put it as like version 1, or, we're at the beginning of starting to get this out to the masses. So the lighting that you're focusing on, if I'm understanding this correctly, is in the evening. Are you also looking at light for the day that does the opposite to get that high amplitude?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because in fact, the LED lights that I told you, all the problems with the blue, they don't have enough blue during the daytime. They're a poor compromise. So you basically, and most of us think about in the old days, People were out about outside so much more. In the modern society, I mean, people were just exposed to daylight. The most, they got out. Whereas many more people worked outside. 90% of people worked in agriculture back, before Edison came along. So we now are 90% of the time living indoors. And of course, it's not just COVID. We're doing this anyway, right? And so people are indoors. And if you're indoors with LED lights, it is not enough blue there to really benefit your sleep. So you need to amp up the blue content. And so, yes, good question. We had to develop light bulbs that boost that blue up to levels. And we figured out what the levels were to keep the clock in sync, keep us fully healthy during the day. And it's just the same as we had to figure out how much blue we had to take out at night.
And so many people want to know kind of what you said about, so you land a bit more of a drifting towards earlier hours. So you wake up and oftentimes it might be dark out, I'm assuming. So people say, well, I do that and I wake up and it's dark. Am I supposed to then get faux bright light exposure, or should I physically just wait until I go outside? Do you have any kind of guidance for those questions?
Yeah, first of all, best possible advice, I do it myself, is get out in the mornings, get a walk, get a jog, run, whatever, get exposed to full spectrum, because the brightness outside is so much greater. In other words, regular sunlight, 50,000 lux plus, as compared to even a bright room inside is 500. In other words, you got a vast change in the amount of light, 100 to 1,000-fold increase in light outside. So that's very good for your health. That's what a dose, true daylight outside is extremely healthy. So yes, that's a first tip. Doing it with electric. One of the things about lighting is our eyes not very good at telling how bright it is comparatively. But if I took this device will also tell how much light is coming out. If I go outside, I'll have 100 times more light than I have inside right now.
Yes.
Even though I'm sitting in a well-lit room.
So true. Okay. So with that, actually, that might be a good opportunity for us to transition into how you're managing your sleep and your light environment and see what we can learn too from you. This is actually really interesting. People always want to know, for someone that's this well-versed like yourself in this area, they want to know, okay, so let's walk through your life so we can learn, how can we apply this in our lives? So our first question that we always ask is, what is your nightly sleep routine looking like? And so we can I'm assuming we might see the lights that you got going on back there, but what else might we see? Walk us through all that.
Well, certainly the bedroom is lit with just the zero blue lights. There's no blue light whatsoever in my bedroom, right? So that's the first step, right?
Great.
Okay. All the other parts of good sleep behavior are there you have to follow. And of course, I've been, in this sleep business for a long time. Keeping to a regular schedule really helps a lot. Have a regular pattern. Have a pattern where you're winding down before you try to go to sleep. In other words, so you do relaxing activities. I unplug my cell phone, or at least I plug it in and put it down in the kitchen. It's not in the bedroom. I'm not doing media or emails just before sleeping, right? In fact, I don't want it waking me up. I don't want to have messages or buzzing going on while I'm trying to go to bed or while I'm trying to fall asleep. So that is not in the bedroom. So leaving your cell phones in a different room charging is good practice. In a perfectly dark room is key. So how do we get to a perfectly dark room? Well, the problem is if you go out to the store and buy a clock, or, whatever in the bedroom, too often they are relatively, people have blue ones, they have white ones. Those are emitting blue light. So my bedroom clock is red, right? It's a red screen. So again, no light there. In the bathroom, you want to be careful in the middle of the night. You got to go to the bathroom and don't trip over things. So I use a little light, very low level light. It's that just plugs into the socket, but it basically just a very low level of light, but it's just pure yellow orange light. There's no blue in it at all. But it enables you're not tripping over yourself, because again, you don't want to fall in the middle of the night in the pitch dark. So those are all part of it, and then all the other things, getting up in the morning, going exercising, taking a vigorous walk, climbing outside, going outside, those sort of things are important. And maintaining a eating well and not too much and on a regular pattern. All those things are part of getting into a regular pattern of sleep. So, I'm a very regular sleeper, and I know what my own pattern is. I know that I am not someone, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, tend to go to bed around 10:30 range, and I might take a nap in the afternoon if I'm sleepy. That's okay.
Yes.
It's made wonderful these days with, we're so much more virtual that we can organize day appropriately, as opposed to the old day when one used to commute into an office and be in an office stuck for fixed hours and then commute out again. There's a freedom there. And I think one of the best advice I can say is create your own time zone, right? In other words, we're all hassling over this whole problem of daylight savings time. Should we have it? Should we have not daylight savings time? There are laws being passed in Congress about that. And the problem is that being driven by a schedule that's not healthy, gets you up too early for your own body, is actually associated with ill health. I mean, I think one of the things people don't realize is if you look at people across a time zone, here in Boston, we're at the east end of a time zone. And you can go out to Cleveland, Ohio, and various places out west, and you're still in Eastern time zone. Well, it so happens the sun is moving across the sky, as it were, and moving across the map of the US about 700 miles an hour. And the time zones are about 700 to 900 miles wide. So basically that says if you're in somewhere like Cleveland or in somewhere like that, you are actually getting dawn an hour later, but you're on the same time zone. So you say, well, look at the kids going to school. I'm raising lots of issues for you here, but go this, all right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So one of the crazy things I looked at recently is in Boston, public schools start at 8:30. You go out to Cleveland, they start at 7. Now, that's got entirely the wrong way around, right? You'd think in Cleveland, they should be starting an hour later than Boston because sunrise doesn't occur. So the kids are going to bed at the time, whereas they've had an hour and a half of light and then they go to school in Boston. And the public schools in Cleveland, and the same again with Detroit, similar thing. You just, it's arriving an hour later, and yet they're going to school an hour and a half later than earlier. So it's all those things. So school's hard to fix, but clearly that needs dealing with. That's a whole nother topic.
Sure.
But in terms of our own individual lives, we've got the freedom now to work from anywhere. That's a great thing, right? We can go and do. I don't know where you are. I can't tell. You could be anywhere, and you could be doing this from Hawaii or from Paris, as far as I know, right?
Yes, exactly.
Good for you, right? So what you choose to look at as you go outside your door is going to change, right?
Yeah.
But you can choose your time zone. So when I'm in the UK, I tend to maintain closer to the Boston time zone because I minimize the change. I don't need to change 5 hours. I don't need to be subjected to 5 hours of jet lag. So again, that's part of, and then the whole secrets about travel that, what time of day do you travel so it doesn't disrupt your sleep and all those things, a lot of questions. But basically having a view of controlling your time zone, which means controlling your relationship to light, because we now know where the ideal relationship of your sleep to light dark cycle is. We know fascinating studies done by Kenneth Wright in Colorado, taking people backpacking out. And I don't know if you know those studies.
Oh, I love those. They make the argument so viscerally, like just so well demonstrated.
And they are sleeping they're going outside without electricity, with no technology with them. They're allowed to have fires like their ancestors did. And their sleep gets so much better. And the difference between morning types and evening types is greatly reduced. And so it's like looking at how our ancestors were in a wonderful, wonderful throwback, only it turns out to be a camping trip in the Colorado wilderness of Colorado. Great study that. But basically, understanding what our natural pattern is. Because if we look at people at the west end of a time zone, they're much less healthy than their neighbors 20 miles away on the east end of the next time zone. Right? So get that. So if you compare look at the thing, we've got these time zones going down across the US, and you look at all the counties on the east side of the time zone who are already running really way, the sunrise really late, and then compare similar counties, similar populations, rural, just as rural or urban as the other, and the health is far worse. The people who are forced to get up early, unnaturally early, because of the time zone. They're following an artificial rule. So forget, what
Forget
time.
it. Yeah.
Pick your own time zone.
Love it.
Get your own time zone.
Yes, I love it. I feel like we have to have you back for a part 2 because one of the things that we're often talking about is, because I'm glad we haven't done any content really going more in depth like you just did on the time zones and where that falls. We've spoken about latitude and where you, from a health geography perspective, where you choose to live and how that could impact your sleep results from a sleep-wake cycle. But we haven't done as much as what you just talked about. So fascinating. So interesting. And I just want to real quick say, you have a book coming out, right? That can help us guide. Yeah. Will you be talking about all this in there to go through?
Yes, absolutely. No, I mean, clearly this is part of the message is how to get this message out now. So I've written a book for the general public, which explains, it's called The Light Doctor. And it's saying, look, don't let your electrician be your doctor. Don't let your hardware store guy be your doctor in choosing lights, right? You actually need to know what are lights that are healthy. That's the book that will have coming out.
Okay, amazing. All right, so I want to hear more about that too. So, and just as far as your personal lifestyle, so we understand your bedtime and so what your night ritual looks like. Then we added in, for a long time, we only had 3 questions. And then we added in this one, which is, what does your morning sleep routine look like? And we say that on purpose with the idea that how your mornings look and in your day, how that can impact your sleep results. So just curious, any call outs that you might have from when you first wake up that we should know about?
Yeah, I know. I think the main thing is having a regular schedule. So I always get up around 5 o'clock in the morning, and my body's pretty much accustomed to that. So I have a routine, drink a cup of coffee, never too much coffee. Some coffee in the morning is great, gets you going, good for your health. Excess coffee, like everything in excess, is a problem. And you certainly don't want to do it too close to bedtime. But no, in the morning. And then, as I say, get outside in the light, get exposed to light, good, healthy light, and get into the regular pattern and eat a good breakfast and all those good things. So those are part of a healthy routine. So it's the regular thing that matters. I think people who have most problems are those who may be forced to work. I mean, so many people are required to work irregular shifts or on call or so forth. Not much they can do about it. But the problem is, if people don't follow these patterns, we now know that people who leave the lights on at night, usually because they're anxious or something like that, that's what they tend to do, they have twice the rates of diabetes, twice the rates of obesity, twice the rates of heart disease than people who switch off the lights and sleep in the dark. Something so essential. And yet almost 50% of the population, particularly an older age population, mid-age and older, over 50% sleep in the light. That's crazy, but it's reality. And so that's part of the education. We're so accustomed, the flick of a light switch, the convenience of light. It's comforting to be able to, see where you are and all the rest of it, or you just fall asleep with the lights on. All that is so important to your health to manage and not do. So really,
huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's critical.
So then with that, our third question is, what might we see on your nightstand, or even if you're traveling, kind of proverbial nightstand, apps, ambiance, what have you. And I'm also curious too, just made me think of it, your stance on blue blockers, and if you feel like there's any validity to that, or if you have concerns, questions, or anything to share on that topic. So what you might see in your nightstand, and would we see blue blockers on there?
Well, you might see a couple of books on my nightstand. So sometimes some quiet reading before bed is nice to have. You would, and as I say, a clock with a red face to it, as opposed to a white or blue face. And let's talk about the glasses, blue blocking glasses. It's really, this is where the science gets a little wonky, or at least the claims get separated from the science, right?
Sure.
Here's the issue. People talk about blue light being bad. Well, it's not bad. It's the time of day you see it. Yes. But it also matters which blue, right? And there is such a lot of misinformation about. It is true that certain types of blue light can damage the eyes. if they're extremely bright. And I mean, if you're out in broad sunlight in the Australian desert or wherever else, you're out somewhere in the beach of Florida, wherever you are, and you've got really intense sunlight, that can be harmful to your eyes. And the blue part of it is actually damages the eye. But as we talked about earlier, how bright it is on the beach, it could be 100,000 lux, a measure of light. Indoors, we rarely get above 500 lux, and more often we're in 200, 300 lux. It is so infinitesimally less, there is no risk whatsoever. And so there are people running around, making this blue light is, anti-blue and all the rest of it. It's a bunch of nonsense indoors. Outdoors is valid, but indoors it's not. Now, there is an issue about blue, as we talked about, as you get into the evening. And so if you look at many of these blue blockers, they don't actually block that 480 nanometer blue that we said is critical. They block some other blue, right? Way down, a different blue. Now, there are some that are genuinely taking out the right blue. And there's a website called Blue Safe 24, for example, which has got these lights in it that are really taking out the circadian relevant blue for evening use. So that type of thing is certainly possible to do. But, there's a lot of loose claims. And the same way, there's a lot of loose claims around circadian lighting. In fact, one of the talks I give is true and false circadian lighting. How do you tell the difference? Because they're just a lot of wild claims. People think if you change the color, you're solving this problem. You're not. People, so there are lots of wild claims out there. So the critical thing is the science is around using this device and knowing exactly which blue you're removing or not removing, and which blue you're providing during the day and removing at night. That's the critical. Make sure you've actually got something that genuinely is a circadian light.
So important. Yeah. And there's a lot of new companies and products and all these things coming out, and an opportunity to take advantage of the fact that so many people are struggling with their sleep and tired and desperate and just want support. So I appreciate you kind of guiding us through making sense of that. And then the last question would be, what would you say for you in your life has made the biggest change in managing your sleep? Or put another way, the biggest aha moment you've had in managing your sleep?
Well, I think it is understanding how critical it is to control the blue content of light. I mean, really comes down to it. In other words, that's really a fundamental thing. I mean, the big aha moment was, all the research I did, as I mentioned, we identified this clock in the brain and how it was controlled by light. Didn't even occur to us that it was blue light. We just thought it was any light, white light.
Right, sure.
And so when we figured out that it was blue and then figured out more precisely exactly which blue, that is just huge, because it's sort of really amazing. And I just tell you something that is mind-boggling. It's certainly mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
If you go and look at where life began deep in the oceans, you could say, well, okay, what light do they see? Well, the thing about seawater is it absorbs all the colors of the rainbow. And by the time you get into deep water, there's only blue down there. And it's only this blue, the 480 nanometer blue, that is the blue that gets in our eyes. And so all the organisms in the sea, the fish and everything else, as well as animals, birds, us, everybody else, are seeing this signal that was first seen millions of years ago when life began. And that signal was blue. So when life emerged in the ocean, started in the oceans, day was blue because they couldn't see any other color. And so those receptors that detected this blue are eons old. They're ancient, and they're ancient through and preserved through all lifetime. And so as we came up out of the water, and our ancestors or remote ancestors did, right? And as we evolved over time, we've kept that key signal. Day is blue and night is no blue. And that was a signal that was right from the beginning of life, when life began.
Wow, it tells it so beautifully. I'm in the midst of Russell Foster's book at the moment, and he kind of speaks to some of that, but I just love how you distilled it so nicely. It's kind of that either or, it's the blue or no blue. So well said. And actually, just real quick question, because I've heard multiple people have different thoughts on this. I don't know why it made me think of it, but so many people will speak to concerns of just that bright a shot of blue light throughout the course of your night being enough to deplete melatonin production and be excitatory in a very quick manner. So meaning like I'll have people that get very concerned about these things, right? So they'll open up the refrigerator door and they get all this bright light. And now they're like, oh no, is my sleep ruined? Is the melatonin totally depleted? Do you have any thoughts, any weigh in on that for people that are nervous?
There are transient effects. In other words, short-term effects, which really are irrelevant. A little dip in your melatonin because you open up the refrigerator and got a dose of light, really irrelevant.
Really irrelevant.
Our system is looking at the big changes. And so if there are little variations, if you think about it, meteor shower in the middle of the night could create a burst of light or whatever, right? It didn't stop evolution, right? It didn't stop us going. So we're very robust about minor changes. It's continuous light for any period of time that's the problem that tends to shift us around. And we are sensitive a little bit, but basically the system is pretty robust. We're designed to be able to predict in our brains when it's going to be safe to go out. In the old days, it used to be pretty unsafe for humans to be wandering around with the saber-toothed tigers and all those monsters out there in the jungle, right, in the middle of the night, because we have very poor sense of vision compared to most night-active animals, more likely to be prey than predator at that time. So humans evolved sleep and they slept at night, kept them out of trouble. So it's a fundamental thing, but we very good at predicting when dawn is occurring. We're also very good in our brains at predicting when it's going to be night, give us time to get back to somewhere safe, not get caught out, and before the sun sets. So it's it's in our genes. It's really fundamental, and it's just amazing that modern technology can get really clever, and then we say, oh, whoops, it's like artificial intelligence, right?
Yes,
we've got really clever at artificial intelligence. I think there's going to be a big whoops coming somewhere down the road.
I think so too. Oh my gosh! Well, so to avoid the whoops for people listening and to have some more guidance from you, underscoring again the fact that you have this book coming. So just wanted to check in. So because I know that people listening now are going to be fascinated by your research, the work that you do, helping to kind of decode what's real, what's not, what do we need to get ourselves worried about, what are the fundamental changes, and how do we actually bring this into our lifestyle? Because it seems like it could be simple on the surface. It's like, oh, okay, so bright lights by day, dim to total darkness by night. But the practical application, there's a lot of things that come up, and with travel and jet lag and all of it. So I know people are going to want to follow what you're up to. So what are the best ways for people to do that and make sure that they get that book when it is released? Right.
Well, I got a website, thelightdoctor.com.
Love that name.
Okay.
Yeah. So good.
And there I post up both the latest research. Also, there's a basic education about it. I've got podcasts in there and, and various videos, teaching videos and all the like. So there's a lot of information there. And obviously that will announce the book when it's ready.
Amazing. Well, that's so exciting, so needed. I feel like this is one of the most untapped areas of health and well-being that are just so transformative and don't have to cost really anything or very low investment to make these changes. And so I'm so excited for us to continue to get this word out, the work that you're doing, bringing all as many researchers and scientists on board, getting the message out to the masses is a big, big deal. So thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you, Molly. It's been a great session with you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Sleep is a Skill podcast, the #1 podcast for people who want to take their sleep skills to the next level. Every Monday, I send out something that I call Molly's Monday Obsessions, containing everything that I'm obsessing over in the world of sleep. Head on over to sleepisaskill.com to sign up.